Well, it's been a little bit. I had to work out some life things, and I haven't recorded anything in a little bit, and I was feeling like I was missing out on commenting on all this great stuff going on in AI. Um, I guess before I should just make a disclaimer to say that I think I've captured a lot of the good stuff that's gone on recently. We'll take a little browser tour here in a minute. Um, but it's evolving. I'm also about to, or I'm about to get a lot of my time back, and so I'm about to embark upon a process where I'm going to take all of my footage from iOS because I have like 3 years of travel footage. I've done stuff like try to narrate, two different mountains I've hiked, probably an untold number of other little adventures that I'm sure I even forgot about. So I got to figure out what to do with that content. And of course, what better thing to do than to just shove it off to AI and I'm gonna have AI, and you kind of get this on iOS already. But I have AI basically label every single piece of media. And then I have some ideas around video generation to sort of dramatically systematize, improving the quality of videos and my ability with ease to create them. Um, so let's start out with this post. I just posted this on LinkedIn this week. I will be able to watch this Dan Martell clip here in a little bit. Um, and basically, like Dan Martell goes on to say exactly what I'm saying here, which is that in this particular book, there's this great example. So when we're looking at AI and its rapid pace, and we don't really know what part of AI we should pay attention to, it seems like the topic of conversation changes every week. And so I hear this happen routinely where people just don't really know how to parse all of the volume of information and the velocity of information coming at them, or the velocity of advancement and change. Um, and I guess for myself, I was around, I could say many different things, but this book, I've sort of could go into the nuances of how to read the specifics in AI, but the best general advice that can be given is echoed by Dan Martell, which I'll show in a little minute. But it's that, as this book claims, it's like, don't invent work or don't focus on things outside of where blockages occur. And so I think, and I'm being biased because I've adopted this approach, but I think the more successful strategy with AI right now is just to automate everything. You're basically, your goal is to recreate exactly what you're doing to be productive in your life and as well in business. Um, all right, so I'll go ahead and pause this so you guys can see this little clip.
It's the tool, but if I don't know what the problem is, then why am I picking the tool before I know what the problem is? So in the world of business, there's this philosophy called theory of constraints. Okay. It comes from the world of manufacturing, but it applies to every system in your life. And the philosophy is simple. If I'm building a car and I have two chassis, one engine, and 16 wheels, how many cars can I build today? Well, my constraint is the one engine, right? So where's the bottleneck? And that's why it's called the theory of constraints. It helps you identify in and output a system, where is the bottleneck? So for example,
And so the importance of what he's saying is that, like, you shouldn't, you should try to focus on where the blockage is in the system. In the manufacturing context, what he's saying is that you can't run the assembly line if you, like, yeah, you might have guys being slow on the tires, but like if that's at the end and it's not blocking anything else, that's actually what it's blocking, is it's blocking like the delivery of the car perhaps. But it's like, if that block is less big than the block of like whoever's working on the engine or something, then you should focus on the engine. And so that's kind of a way to think about AI right now. Um, another thing that I think about when it comes to AI is like, basically, um, eh, as well, these big companies are generally going to dominate the infrastructure. And it's not just about big companies, but it's also about, the the capital interest as well, because the capital floats between all of these big companies. And so, you really should try to focus on not just where blockage is, but also what is not going to likely be improved by the big platforms. So I've seen, of course, people that are trying to build, whether that's like a VS Code fork, or they're trying to like somehow productize OpenClaw, whatever it might be. I asked a guy this week, I was like, it's like, hey, have you used OpenClaw yet? And his response was that, I think I'm building my own equivalent, OpenClaw. I've talked to, a lot of people like, and so a lot of these plays unfortunately end up failing. They're great for research and learning, but if you're trying to be successful and navigate these things, I just wouldn't really say that it's a successful way to do it. Anyway, so I mean, moving on to our next topic. So it's coming across, this is about secrets management. So this has come up a couple times now. So this guy's talking about, he has reported that 28 million secrets have been leaked on GitHub. And he built a secret detection library, which I don't know if it reads UIDs or it probably does like a set of heuristics upon different repositories. I actually have data now that I think about it that I could probably help this guy out with. I just have about, let me go check the data set. Let's go on a little adventure and then we'll go respond to this guy, just to do some role playing. Yeah. So basically I have access to, probably shouldn't show this. Interesting. For research purposes, I think it's fair and game within terms of service. Um, okay. Well, yeah, let's do this again. Um, so yeah, I should probably just tell this guy, basically I've had this project that I've embarked upon to understand uh, just usage of JavaScript libraries. And I have probably about I think 200,000 repositories. Let's say quickly just tell him, okay, if it is interested to figure, don't have the code, just the links to the repositories, but happy to chat if interesting. All right. Well, moving on. Here's another person that basically also had issues. They're in fact convinced that so, okay, well, the first one we just looked at, that was people talking about like, he built a product that found millions, tens of millions of secrets leaked, presumably just from LLM written code. Now we have a different level of, I don't want to call this person out and say they're confused, but we tend to think that he says right here, you can't protect your env from Claude code. So I had AI. Oh, this is embarrassing. Wow. Are you kidding me? This is what the AI just cooked up. This is kind of hilarious. Let's open a new tab. No, it's not. I don't think I can make it much bigger, but I have to. Okay. No, here, figured out. Well, that's mildly annoying. So, what I was trying to show was how the, basically like you have these two posters, the one saying again that you have, millions of 28 million secrets, that he's found that are leaked. And then we have this guy saying that you can't protect your env from Claude code. So that's actually just not true. This diagram that I had ChatGPT produce shows an oper and tor and Oh man, they made this really dumb. Um, so yeah, so basically the way you would, let's see, let's figure out how to explain what this has come up with. So let me explain it like this. Your env file on your system, on your operating system, can be owned by a user that is not the user that is running the LLM. Likewise, this works just not only for the secrets leakage, but in general, like it controls any process you would run that would be exposed to the open internet. So the general idea here is that you would have a user that is not your the user that you log in as. So let's call it like you have user and then you have LLM user. So LLM user basically could request user to run a command, so an elevated command, for example. And this, I think the chart maybe captures. So basically, you log in as an SSH user to your server, and then you would enter in a password that you remember to user. So this is, and I say you, but I mean like this would be, you could log in as this user, and then you could run LLM's commands safely. And so you would enter your password to be able to run commands as this user that will then mount as part of that command. It will mount the secrets into your environment variables, and then it will call the command. And so this means that because one of the main exploitations, so the main issue, right, that we're having when it comes to exposed secrets is that the LLM has access to read the file system. So if you don't have access to read the secrets, in particular, the secrets file, that's how it gets pushed up to GitHub. At the same time, uh, you, what am I trying to say? And so at the same time, it would give the LLM the ability to call the secure binary that would automatically melt the secrets. And it's just much less likely. So it's more likely that the LLM would mistakenly push up the secret to the internet through like a Git repository or whatever, than it would be to sort of know how to run this command that you authorize. So it wouldn't have its own unattended access to the secrets. That's more of a thing for, I don't know. It's more, it's more of an operational necessity, but put that aside. What I'm more just trying to conceptualize here is that it is possible to create an environment where it's much more less likely, so long as your LLM is able to operate without needing the environment variables. It's not going to like go so far off of its alignment to go try to discover what's sitting in memory. It's not going to try to write those things to the file system, let alone then commit them. So it's just less likely than with the current regime. So that's just something I wanted to sort of loosely try to illustrate. This is my attempt at. We can go look at the more complicated version that I had the GPT come up with. But I think when it came up with all of this, I said, this is complicated and I don't think people are going to get it. You can see all of this like full text schematic or whatever. So let's jump topics a little bit. So this is something that happened last week. This is basically the Axios library, which everyone should know about, basically got compromised. And this shouldn't take long at all. Like basically what I'm encouraging every person to do is just use a property called max age release. So if we go to my code, of course I messed up the name, min age release, not max age, that's opposite. So just put this npm rc in your home directory. And what this will do, if you have it's just min release age, it's basically saying you're making the bet that so long as the window of compromise is not longer than 30 days, someone's going to catch the leaked supply chain attack and you'll be safe. You'll never install like their Trojan horse or whatever. Um, but yeah, you just need to know that like this continues to happen, and the stuff that I'm seeing in cybersecurity is continuing to say like, wow, this is a really big deal. Um, this dropped, Gemma dropped. I don't know what to think about it yet. I do see guys, I spend a lot of time hanging out in the OpenClaw community, and I see a lot of people talking about this more. I've seen this make the rounds. I've yet to try it out, and see what's going on with Gemma, but the idea is that it's able to run locally like your local llama, and that the benchmark that I saw looked quite impressive, so that it actually, and I think the useful video that I'll go share here in a second. So yeah, like this guy said is going to say it better than I possibly could. Tuna Papers is like one of the most legit graphics researchers, and only recently did he start going on like, instead of being faceless. And I never pictured this is going to sound, as soon as you listen to this guy, I would never picture that he would sound like the sound of the voice would match to the guy. And this guy's amazing. Great source of information. So let's have a look.
A huge announcement about their new method that lets us run AI techniques cheaper. The news took the world by storm. This came at the best possible time because we have a worldwide memory shortage. So, the prices for capable laptops and GPUs and anything that can run these AI systems is up by an insane amount. And this work would make them much cheaper to run. They call it Turbo Quant. Roughly speaking, they claim 4 to 6 times less memory. That is insane. And 8 times faster computation for a part of the neural network called attention. No meaningful loss in output quality.
And so, like, I haven't yet, and I don't want to be reporting on bad information because I haven't yet linked, because what he's talking about is clearly different than what is there with Gemma.
This is going to be a
Um, so I can't say definitively, but the other reporting that I'm hearing on Gemma seems as though it kind of matches up. Like in other words, the benchmarks for Gemma sort of say that it's smaller, it can run locally, and it actually is really performant. So it might align with that research that I just flashed on the screen. This story I love. So this is the actress from one of my favorite movies as a teenager, Dazed and Confused. Here, let's full screen that. And so an actress now is inventing an AI, which is, I think it's so cool. And so she's basically, there's this big problem right now in AI of memory. And basically she worked with her developer friend to solve this problem. And apparently the benchmarks are like pretty good. And even if like I watched a review video of someone trying to use this thing, and like even if like I don't know if I agree that what they've done is maybe novel, but I don't know that it's like I don't know how much weight I put on any of this. In other words, I don't, but I just think it's cool regardless that a celebrity is coming up with stuff. This was something that this is from my own personal experience. So years ago, and I have no affiliation with this guy. But I met one of his friends. This is NBA star Spencer Dinwiddie, and this is the kind of story that would sound unbelievable, except I was in Boulder, and any D1 school, is generally going to feed people to professional sports, and so it's understandable that you would come across. I basically was working with a D1 athlete who was probably destined for professional sports himself, had an injury, and then this guy was his best friend. And I remember us talking back then about what could the future of influencers look like. And I'm bringing this up this is more of this is me just finding this topic relevant. In fact, I think in part because that the Dan Martell video that I showed earlier, he actually goes on later in the video talking about how you really need to be using AI to like run your whole life, to like be your personal assistant, know all of your routines, and be your best advocate. So, and I don't want to call myself like that far of a visionary, but I mean,
User.
so basically all the way back when I was like talking to this guy's friend, I remember saying that like I think the future would be that like instead of following people, like you're gonna have your AI assistant like have its algorithm be influenced a little bit by people that you choose to follow. And like part of what I was researching at that time was like how could you actually produce the data or information to like make it so. So I just think this is a cool idea, like the evolution, like I said, covered in that Dan Martell video. Um, where he's basically saying that the first stage is like you just have to sort of allow the AI to be access to like your various things that you kind of have a digital presence for, and then just figure out how to automate your life. Going back to that example, like look at your life as like an assembly line, as an auto plant. Now it doesn't make a lot of sense, but I mean more like look at areas that you could automate. Like we have tax season coming up, like you could automate your finances and then send that stuff off to the AI. Maybe it's personal finance and budgeting. Like you could have the AI check in and say, hey, can you monitor? And I'm not advocating this is the best case because obviously exposing your bank information could have like pitfalls, especially if not secure. But I'm of the mind for the moment. There's nothing like, so long as the actual access to the LM, it's not as though the LM's gonna, or the AI is going to do anything nefarious and will like, you know, regurgitate your information on the open web. So, I'm not sure what experiences like when we looked at secrets being leaked, what experiences other people are having, but there are responsible ways to work with this stuff. But the more important point is, um, can you basically figure out a way to systemize your life and then use sort of like imagine you had a coach or a business coach or a life coach basically like and so Dan Martell in this video that I brought up is basically advocating that you do that. And then I believe that the next
Okay. And it's all in your
base sequential results of that is that we'll find that once you're using this type of system, that there will be some people that are like, give me a little bit of that guy. Cause I want to know, like, how does he spend his day? And like, this is what I'm interested about him. Can you make my life a little bit more like his? And that's at least what I was researching about 10 years ago. So this is the future that we're coming into is kind of the story that I wanted to share. And lastly, like maybe a little less exciting, but to me, like I spent I was, um, started out in games and like today we were chatting in the open cloud community about like our LLMs or what's LLMs rules in games development. And I found a lot of misconceptions because there's an assumption that, oh, of course we're doing LLMs in games. We're not. A lot of the people we're talking about, people reference this game No Man's Sky, which we can kind of open on the sidebar here. And this is like a game that I guess procedurally generates worlds and people are very impressed by it. But like the key word there is that it's procedural. And so this is different than AI generated. Procedural just means that like you're going to have 100 different character combination customizations. Sorry, 100 different categories of character customization, and that across all those ranges of values, like your total addressable number of combinations might be in the billions. So from the user's perspective, it might as well be, generated. And the distinction becomes when you talk about generative, that's very different because that would require learning features of a system and then given just by giving it more data, and then it would come up on its own with what those look like. And so basically like I wanted to investigate, and sort of what we learned is that, so not only the first distinction is that right now, not much is being done in generative. What you would need to have in order to get generative is, so if we go, it's good. And so like, if we imagine looking at this world of this game, you have to sort of think that probably a good portion of these like 3D models, like these ships, for example, um, like that currently we do it, as far as my research today concludes, it's like we don't have the infrastructure, meaning like the tools that can create I learned by looking this up is creating geometry on the fly. Now we can do some things when it comes to creating geometry on the fly, notably with terrain. So terrain would be a really good example. But if you look at, you can even see this, what are called, I think they're called splines, are sort of depicted here. So you can see that this probably compared to like a complex like ship model that we just looked at, it's not that much data. So to be able to generate this using math equations wouldn't be terribly hard compared to generating, a ship um, that looks like cohesive. And so, and not just that, but even if you did manage to generate it, how do you generate that in real time, so that the player can see it? So there's two different concepts. One is because in what I sort of not argue for, but I basically say that the likely path in games is that this is going to happen on the tools level, and it's going to unblock the development process before it's going to become something that like you experience as a game that's completely generated on the fly. So that future is, we could predict that well in advance and sort of say these things have to come first. I eventually, in this conversation, I ended up asking, well, what is Unreal Engine doing? And so as of right now, like, again, going back to that idea of like, you can have 100 different filters for character creation. And you could even see, if we blow this up really big, you could see maybe, oops, it's way too big. Um, but you could see, for example, if I was able to get this bigger, you'd be able to see that, for example, like you can customize the hair, you can customize the teeth, the makeup, the skin. And so across these categories, for every addressable combination that you can make, like, basically, like, it's going to look unique every time. But this is an area that, on top of that, I would guess that it's said that Epic Games has some kind of LLM like quality to this stuff. So this is specifically called procedural content generation. And for the sake of being comprehensive, we might as well look it up here. And so there's ways in which, like, like I tried to identify today, it's like it's easy enough to come up with, let's say you have 100 different tree models, 100 different bush models, or maybe you have a system within each where you can customize a bush to be like 100 different ways, given like that the leaf looks like this. Um, it's easy enough to come up with terrain that has like rocks and trees, because there's nothing that's very feature rich about it. I'd have to learn more, because it will eventually advance along these lines. So it might have already done so, but this was just something interesting to check in on. And of course, as with Unreal, this looks quite technical. So we're not going to get something that's like clippable. But if we scroll to the bottom, oftentimes at the end, they'll have an interesting. But yeah, see how at the bottom it says static meshes. So I would assume that like what you're getting is that in this environment, you'd probably have something that says like, in this particular environment, here's the 100 different tree models we have. Like they should on general have an average spacing of this, but like it's okay if the density of the trees fluctuates by this. And like based on that, like if you have a square acre equivalent that's virtual, let's say, like probably come up with this many rocks, they're this close together, this sizing, things of that nature is generally like what we're talking about. And that's, to me, it's still not really in the realm of being anything LLM like. I saw something that's really got me thinking. I was watching John Carmack this week actually talk about how LLMs, he's working on reinforcement learning, which is a different branch of artificial intelligence. And he's basically saying that LLMs and even reinforcement learning techniques are not good at playing games, that's a separate anecdote that I've been thinking about. But it gives you ideas or benchmarks of like what AI can capably do, and what is, less likely. So I think that's it for today. We got through all of our content. I was a little worried. I don't want to like show data that's like, oh man, you violated TOS, but I think I'm actually within the clear on that. And yeah, till next time, probably next video I'll shoot, I'll talk about things I've been working on.